Welcome back, or if this is your first visit, thank you for choosing to sit down in this little peaceful corner. Tonight we will journey to ancient Greece, a world famous for philosophy, democracy and naked statues. But behind it lies a far harsher truth. Are you ready? Let Sleeping History take you back in time to explore life in ancient Greece. Welcome to ancient Greece, where your alarm clock isn't a ringing bell but the sunlight slipping through wooden shutters, turning the whole house into a slow-cooking oven. Your modest home is built from sun-dried mud bricks or rough stone, with thick walls that don't insulate much. The windows have no glass, only wooden shutters to keep out curious goats or chickens, and sometimes, if the gods Zeus or Aeolus are feeling generous, you might be blessed with a rare cool breeze. There are no fans, no air conditioning, and the concept of a private room exists only in poetry. You wake up early, not out of iron will, but because the temperature has already made sleeping feel like a form of torture. You start your day in ancient Greece not with a cup of coffee, but with a splash of cold water that makes your heart race faster than hearing news of war. There is no warm shower, only the cool whisper of Poseidon's gift, drawn from the well and poured from an amphora into a clay basin in the courtyard. One scoop to the face, another to the neck, a few more over your head, and you're fully awake, even if the sun hasn't quite risen yet. The ancient Greeks didn't use soap. That luxury would only be developed later by the Romans. Instead, you rub olive oil all over your body to soften and cleanse your skin. Not everyone gets to use the fine kind you'd drizzle over a salad. Sometimes it's old, slightly rancid oil, but still applied like a treasured possession. Once your skin glistens, you take out a strigil, a curved scraper made of bronze or iron, and scrape away the layers of oil, dust and sweat from your body. The faint sound of metal gliding over skin echoes in the white stone courtyard, leaving you feeling cool, slick, and then dry, like pebbles under the midday sun. After the oil bath, you move on to your next mission, dealing with body odour. There's no deodorant and certainly no Chanel No. 5, so you turn to nature's arsenal. A few leaves of mint, basil, or sage tucked into your clothing, hoping to mask the scent you'll build up after a long morning at the market or debating philosophy under the blazing sun. Bathing in ancient Greece wasn't just about getting clean. It was also a social affair. In the morning you might drop by the public baths where people scrub themselves while talking politics, sports or gossip. Water is often drawn from a reservoir, poured over the body with scoops, or enjoyed by soaking in a cool stone basin. There are no showers, but in exchange you get the feeling that you're part of the liveliest club in town. If you're as wealthy as the upper class, you will own a tiny perfume jar imported from Egypt, made from fragrant resins and pine wood, precious as gold. Just a single drop behind the ear is enough to make anyone you meet curious, for its scent is stranger than the philosophy of Socrates. The Greeks believed that the body is the temple of the soul, so even without soap or towels, you still begin your morning feeling as if you have refreshed both body and spirit. If you are a woman, in the morning you must take a clay amphora and step onto the cool stone-paved streets. Water, to the Greeks, is not just for drinking. It is a gift from the nymphs, so you cannot fetch it in a hurried manner. The path to the public fountain, Kreen, may stretch several hundred metres, sometimes uphill, but every woman here must make the trip. A full jar can weigh up to 30 kilograms, burning your shoulders with pain, yet you must make at least 2 trips for the whole household. Slip and break the jar, and you bring disaster, for every drop of water is sacred, used to bathe before rituals, wash hands before meals, or bid farewell to the dead. You wash your face with cool water from the 2-handled jar placed in the corner of the courtyard, then leisurely change your clothes. There's no frantic zipping or debating between a t-shirt and a dress shirt. You simply drape yourself in a chiton, a long, lightweight piece of fabric, pinned at the shoulders and loosely tied at the waist. The hem brushes your bare ankles against the cool stone floor as the morning breeze slips over sun-browned skin. If you are a farmer or a potter, your chiton will be shorter and simpler, or just a piece of cloth wrapped around the hips for ease of work. But if you belong to the intellectual class, you throw on a himation, a large cloak over the shoulder, keeping you warm while making you look as though you're pondering the meaning of the universe. Shoes, not needed at home. When you go out, you slip on loosely tied leather sandals. Your hair is tied neatly with a fabric band, smoothed with a touch of olive oil for shine, and checked in a dim bronze mirror before you step into the street. Beards may be worn long and shaped with beeswax, for in Athens, a well-kept beard is as important as a well-phrased piece of philosophy. Everything moves slowly, almost like meditation. But you know well, this is only the gentle pause before the day bursts forth with heat and challenges. In ancient Athens, your breakfast is so simple that if you told a modern person, they might think you were fasting. In front of you is only paximadi, a twice-baked barley bread, dark brown and hard as river stones. You know that if you try to bite it straight away, your teeth will ache sharply, so by habit you soak it in oinos, diluted grape wine, or in the cool well water fetched early in the morning. You wait, watching the bread darken and soften just a little, before lifting it to your mouth and chewing slowly. The taste is nothing exciting, just the faintly burnt aroma of barley, a slight tang of wine, and the dry texture gradually dissolving on your tongue. But to you, it is the necessary fullness to begin the day. If today there are a few salted olives, a wedge of salty goat cheese, or a fig freshly picked from the garden, that is already a luxurious breakfast. If you are poor, like most Athenians, a small piece of paximadi must be shared by the whole family. Some days it is all the food for all 3 meals. The wealthier might have honey cakes, dried fruits from the island of Naxos, or fresh white cheese. But they too eat sparingly. Here, showing off at the dining table is seen as a sign of a weak spirit and a lack of reason. So this morning you take the softened piece of bread, sip the diluted wine, and step out onto the stone-paved street. Your stomach is not truly full, but your mind feels clear and light. And in Athens, that is enough to start the day. For a full stomach will not necessarily make you a good citizen, but a day begun with restraint will keep your reason as clear as the Mediterranean sun. When the morning light still glimmers like diluted milk on the white walls of Athens, you merge into the stream of people heading toward the agora, the beating heart of the city-state. This is not just a market. This is where Athens looks into the mirror, where every footstep on the marble stones echoes alongside the eternal question, how should one live? The scent of olive oil, dried fish from the port of Piraeus, and charcoal smoke from baking stools blend together. Merchants spread out indigo-dyed cloth, display red and black pottery etched with scenes of mythology. Amid the crowd are those who neither buy nor sell. They simply stand there, eyes alight, asking questions that demand no answers. They are philosophers. Here, Socrates once walked barefoot, questioning everyone from the wine cellar to the city guard. What is justice? And you know, anyone who hears that question will carry it home like a stone in their pocket, heavy, but impossible to put down. The agora is also a parliament without walls, where free citizens debate matters of war, taxes, and new laws. Reason is the only weapon here. The weak are dismissed, the strong lead. You, if you are a male citizen, have the right to step straight into the circle of debate, cloak draped over your shoulder, head held high. But you also see in the shade of the colonnade those who may only watch, women, slaves, foreigners. They are Athens, yet they are not the voice of Athens. Under the Mediterranean sun, as the shadows of stone columns stretch long like question marks, you realize the agora is not just a place. It is the feeling of living in a city that is always asking itself who we are. If you are a woman in Athens, the agora is not for you. No matter how wealthy you are, you're only a shadow in public space, able to manage property, command slaves, yet with no voice before the law. You step outside only for festivals, weddings, or funerals, your face hidden behind a veil or a long cloak, your footsteps always trailed by watchful eyes. If you are a slave, your life is bound to labour, whether you were born here or captured from a distant land. You carry water, buy fish, mix wine, lull children to sleep, deliver your master's messages through the streets. Some learn to read and write, even manage estates, but no matter how skilled you are, you remain property, able to be sold, beaten, or made to vanish without anyone needing to ask why. So if you are a free man in Athens, know that you're fortunate, so long as you do not wear chains around your neck. Athenian society is like a perfect ceramic vase, flawless yet riddled with cracks, beautiful, intricate, but unjust. A few hundred free citizens debate philosophy in the agora, while thousands of women and slaves are confined behind walls, peeking at life only through the slit of a curtain. As you walk through the square, you see merchants displaying purple cloth from Phoenicia, salted fish from the Black Sea, Corinthian pottery telling stories of the gods. Athens shrinks into an international port, the scent of Egyptian resin mingling with the clink of Lydian gold coins, and rumours of monsters from the east. Nearby, blacksmiths fan their forges, bending gleaming swords. Potters spin their wheels, shaping hydria water jars. Skillful hands craft small statues of the gods so perfectly that worshippers shiver at the sight. Threaded among the crowd are the advocates, lawyers without nameplates, composing sharp, satirical and philosophical speeches for those about to face trial. Strolling a few more laps around the agora, you come across a small wooden table. An old man with a long beard is grinding a pinch of herbs in his hands, lifting them to his nose, the physician of Athens. There are no hospitals, only men like him, trained under Hippocrates, able to read a pulse, mix roots with honey to bring down a fever. No diplomas, only experience and faith, and sometimes that is the only medicine left. Leaving the market, you head toward the Parthenon construction site, the great temple honouring Athena. Architects calculate the exact tilt of each column, skilled craftsmen work with axe and hammer, and hundreds of slaves haul stones from Mount Hymettus and Mount Pentelicus. There are no cranes, no drills, only pulleys, ropes, and human strength. A single stone weighing several tons can take 2 weeks and 30 men to bring to the foundation. By mid-morning you take a break with the workers. A simple meal, hard bread, salted olives, a water flask. Sitting right on an unfinished block of stone, you watch the temple columns rise higher, knowing that even if your name will never be carved there, every drop of sweat will remain forever with Athens. Back among the crowd in the agora, you see two men arguing over a failed trade, then dragging each other to court. In Athens, the courtroom is not hidden behind gates and walls. It is an open-air stage where justice and drama unfold before everyone's eyes. There are no professional judges, no lawyers to speak on your behalf. Everyone must defend themselves, from the pottery workshop owner to the wine cellar. Cases cover every matter imaginable: land disputes, goat theft, adultery, even offences against the gods. And the crowd comes not only to hear the verdict, but for entertainment, bringing bread and wine as if on a picnic. You may even encounter hired witnesses, people willing to swear an oath on events they have never seen, as long as they are paid. The jury is made up of ordinary citizens, sometimes as many as 500, who cast a white stone to acquit or a black stone to convict into a clay jar. When the jar is tipped and the stones spill out, a person's fate changes forever. In Athens, the courtroom is not only a place of judgment, it is where words become weapons, and no one ever gets bored of watching. It may seem leisurely, but it is not. You live in Athens in the 5th century BCE, the golden age of this city-state. War is not a distant thing, it is present in every corner of life. Athenians believe the polis is the common home, and every citizen has the duty to defend it. In the Greek view, death on the battlefield, with shield in hand and face toward the enemy, is the most noble death, worthy of the gods and remembered by future generations. When you turn 18, you're no longer just your parents' son. You become part of the city-state with clear obligations. On that important day, you are brought before the council of your dem, the smallest administrative unit of Athens, to have your name entered into the Lexiarchikon Grammateion, the official register of citizens. Here, the elder men of the community will examine: were both your father and mother Athenian citizens? Do you have any deformity or disability that would make bearing arms impossible? Are you strong enough to carry an aspis shield weighing 7 or 8 kilograms, wear a linothorax armour, and march for hours under the sun? Only if you meet all these criteria will you be recognised as an ephebos, a new recruit, and if you do not meet them, failure to be entered into the Lexiarchikon Grammateion, the register of citizens, means you are not entitled to full citizenship. You will not be allowed to vote, have a voice in the ecclesia, citizens' assembly, or hold any office in the machinery of the city-state. To be denied recognition as an ephebos is not just to lose an opportunity, but to lose the right to stand as an equal among other citizens. In Athenian society, where honour is bound to the role of defending the polis, it is almost a closed door to being regarded as a true Athenian. After being recognised as an ephebos, you and the other epheboi gather at a sacred site. perhaps the Nyx Hill or a temple dedicated to Ares, the god of war. With your right hand raised, you swear not to dishonour your weapons and never betray your comrades, not to flee from the ranks, even when the enemy is upon you, to protect the gods, the laws, and the land of Athens, to pass on the city-state stronger and better to the next generation. This oath is not a symbolic gesture. If you break it by fleeing, betraying, or bringing shame to the army, you will be deemed atimos, stripped of your citizenship and shunned by society. Immediately after the swearing-in ceremony, you leave the familiar roof of your home for the Ephebus barracks near the borders of Attica. This first journey is not merely leaving your family, it is stepping out of the life of a youth and into the world of men who bear the burden of war. Each day begins before the sun has fully risen above the horizon. The blast of a bronze trumpet wakes the entire camp, and within minutes you're lined up, wearing a short chiton, a lintothorax armour woven from multiple layers of stiff linen over your shoulders, and gripping tightly an aspis shield weighing nearly 8 kilograms. Weapons training is the core of your life here. You grow accustomed to the dory, a spear longer than your own height, learning how to keep it steady so the tip doesn't tremble even when your arms ache. The short Xiphos sword is drawn when the formation breaks, and you must know how to stab and slash at close range. The round shield is not only to cover yourself, but must be angled just right to protect part of the body of the comrade to your left, because in the phalanx, the life of the man beside you depends on you. You're also taught to use the bow, throw the akon javelin, and fire a sling to strike from a distance. Between these there are physical conditioning drills, running long distances around the camp, leaping over sand pits, wrestling in pairs, swimming across rivers. The instructor repeats over and over, an Athenian warrior is not only strong in muscle, but must be as flexible as a bowstring. Meals are so simple that you find yourself missing home cooking. Barley bread, a piece of goat cheese, a few dried figs, and water. No one is starving you on purpose. This is training in endurance so that later, in the midst of a long campaign, an empty stomach cannot break your will. So it goes for the first year. By the second year, you are no longer the awkward recruit. Now your duty is to truly protect Athens. You take turns guarding the city gates, watching over the port of Piraeus where ships dock, patrolling the borders of Attica to detect signs of intrusion. These patrols last for hours, crossing stone roads, open fields, or threading through mountain passes, where a single enemy ambush could bring danger crashing down. You are also tasked with escorting caravans of goods or religious offerings, ensuring that no one plunders them or disrupts the rites. At night, you sleep on a straw mattress in a field barracks, wearing a kitaniskos over your body, your weapons placed right beside you. At the sound of a bronze trumpet or the cry of an alarm, the entire unit must rise instantly, form ranks and level spears and shields outward like a forest of sharp points. Discipline is strict. Leaving your post without orders or dozing off while on watch means disgrace, and can even bring harsh punishment in front of the whole unit. But after 2 years, you will return to Athens not just as a citizen, but as a hoplite, a warrior of the city-state, ready to answer the call of the polis at any time. If you were born in Athens, military duty begins the moment you pass the age of 18, the age Athenians see as the boundary between youth and full citizenship. For the first 2 years, you live in the barracks, honing your combat skills, and then you return to civilian life. But return does not mean leaving the army. Whenever the polis calls, you must still put on your armour, take up your spear, and march to the battlefield. During the times you're not in active service, you're entitled to take part in civic life, debating politics in the agora, attending sessions of the assembly, or watching plays at the Dionysia. Athens believes that a perfect citizen is one who can both fight, debate, and create. If you were born in Sparta, the story is entirely different. From the age of 7, you leave your mother's embrace and enter the ago, the most rigorous system of military training and discipline in all of Greece. There, you learn to handle weapons, wrestle, run long distances, endure cold, endure hunger, and live under constant supervision. Food is often insufficient, and stealing is punished harshly, not for the act itself, but for the failure to avoid being caught. You sleep on a bedding of reeds you cut yourself from the fields, with no blankets or mattresses. Complaining is seen as weakness. At 20, you officially become a warrior, but you still live in the barracks, eating with your comrades, rarely returning home. Military service lasts nearly a lifetime until your strength can no longer sustain it. In Sparta, you do not have the profession of a soldier. You are a soldier. The day you first put on a hoplites armour, you understand why the elders call it your second home. It weighs between 20-30 kilograms, and every piece has a life or death purpose. The Corinthian bronze helmet fits tightly to the head, covering forehead, cheeks, and nose, leaving only 2 narrow eye slits and a thin mouth opening. Sound inside is muffled, and your own breathing echoes within the searing bronze shell under the sun. The lenothorax armour is made of many layers of compressed linen, lighter than bronze armour, yet strong enough to stop a thrust. The aspis shield is the soul of the hoplite, round, about 1 metre in diameter, weighing 7 to 8 kilograms. Faced with bronze, your arm slipped through a leather strap and gripping a handle. When raised, it covers you from chin to knee. On the battlefield, the shield not only protects you, but also the man to your left, which is why dropping it is the greatest disgrace. The dory spear, 2-3 metres long, is your primary weapon, with a bronze or iron tip and a sturdy wooden shaft. In the phalanx formation, your spear point, alongside dozens of others, forms a wall of death. The short Xiphos sword, double-edged, is drawn when the line breaks, or when the fighting is too close for the spear to be used. When you wear the full set of armour, you carry not only bronze and iron on your shoulders, you carry the honour of your family, the pride of your ancestors, and the oath to protect the polis. With every step, the weight of the armour reminds you that the freedom and survival of the city-state have been bought with the sweat, blood, and lives of those who wore the same armour before you. Military service in ancient Greece is not merely learning how to wield a spear, hold a shield, or march under the sun. It is a profound transformation. From an individual with personal concerns, you become part of the living body of the polis. From an ordinary young man, you are forged into a living symbol of strength, honour, and civic responsibility. In the barracks, you learn to suppress fatigue and fear, placing the common good above personal interest. The grueling drills do not only build muscle, they instill discipline and the ability to place absolute trust in your comrades. The Greeks believed that victory did not come from the strength of any single man, but from the perfect cohesion of the entire formation. And then comes the moment you step into the phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, shield against shield, bronze spears jutting forward into a wall of deadly points. And you realise a simple yet unforgiving truth. Your life depends on the man to your left and right, and their lives depend on you. If you fall or flee, the entire line collapses. The survival of the polis begins with the steadfastness of each warrior in the formation. This spirit, civic virtue, is the core of ancient Greek thought. It is what made Athenians ready to leave their work and families to defend the city-state. It is what made Spartans see returning alive without one's shield as more shameful than death. Military service, therefore, does not only forge warriors, it cultivates a generation that places the polis above themselves, knowing that freedom and honour exist only if every citizen is willing to defend them with their very life. Beyond military duty, to maintain the health and agility necessary for war, you regularly visit the gymnasium, a special institution of the city-state. This is not merely a place for physical exercise. It is also a centre for socialising, learning and debating philosophy with fellow citizens and teachers. The word gymnasium comes from gymnos, meaning naked, and indeed, you and the others train without clothing, not as a display of vanity, but because you believe that a healthy body is a symbol of freedom and strength. Each day you devote time to a variety of exercises, running on the dirt track, practicing the long jump, wrestling and lifting simple weights. These activities not only build endurance but also develop agility and flexibility, essential qualities for holding a spear in the phalanx formation. Trainers, often experienced men, observe and correct your technique, while also passing on lessons about discipline and the warrior spirit. The gymnasium is also where philosophical discussions begin, as you debate with friends on topics such as justice, honour, and the responsibilities of a citizen within the polis. Physical and intellectual training are seen as two inseparable sides of the perfect warrior. In addition, athletic festivals like the Olympics or the Panathenaea are major events that you, and every Athenian citizen, look forward to. Whether you compete or simply watch the contests, running races, wrestling, chariot races or sword fighting, You feel the pride of seeing your city-state honoured on the international stage. Victories bring not only personal fame, but also a display of the strength and unity of the community. That is when you are a man. But if you are a woman, you're not the centre of public attention as men are. Your role is largely confined within the walls of the household, keeping the hearth warm, bearing children, and managing domestic affairs. Your life revolves far more around the home than around the bustling marketplace or the lively agora. It is not hard for you to feel the stark difference between the two sexes. Men can freely step outside, take part in politics, discuss philosophy, and even bear arms in battle. You, as a woman, are expected to be modest, discreet, and always obedient. If you dare to express yourself too openly or step beyond the accepted boundaries, the gaze of society will quickly pass judgment. The ideology of this era regards women as symbols of virtue and loyalty, the guardians of honour not only for themselves but for their families and entire lineage. Every action you take is carefully weighed, for you carry the responsibility of preserving the purity and order of the household. You cannot speak of women in ancient Greece without knowing that society divided them into very different groups. If you are a free woman, you are a wife, a mother, and the keeper of the sacred family hearth. You're not allowed to participate in politics, but you're expected to fulfill your role at home, raising the next generation, managing domestic affairs, and educating your children. Your life is largely tied to the private sphere. If you're a slave, your life is far more difficult. Your work often involves serving, cleaning, or even acting as a domestic helper in wealthy households. You have virtually no rights and endure heavy oppression. Your life is a chain of days spent working and serving, without a voice or personal freedom. If you are a hetera, however, your life is entirely different. You're not a slave, nor merely a wife confined to the home. You're educated, literate, skilled in music and singing, and above all, you are a companion to wealthy men. You appear at symposium banquets, places where not everyone is permitted to enter. Your role is both that of an artist and a confidant, who can soothe the souls of warriors and philosophers. It is a position of both privilege and challenge. Now imagine you're a young woman in your 20s in Athens. That's right. You're no longer a child and your fate has been set since you were very young. Your marriage usually comes early, between the ages of 12 and 15, long before you have had the chance to truly understand the world beyond your home. This marriage is not your choice, but the decision of your family. Your parents have negotiated and chosen a husband they deem suitable, often to strengthen the family's status or wealth. Your greatest role in your new household is to bear children, especially sons. This is not only about continuing the family line, but also about ensuring the honour and legacy of your household. You will spend many months in pregnancy, then devote yourself to caring for and raising your children with all your heart. Alongside this, you must manage the household, preparing food, cleaning, and supervising slaves. Preserving the family's honour requires you to be careful with your words and actions, especially when interacting with men outside your kin. Meeting unfamiliar men is rare and considered improper, even dangerous. You have no citizenship rights, which means you cannot take part in debates at the agora, nor vote nor run for political office. Your voice, if heard at all, is confined within the walls of your home. In terms of property, you cannot freely own or control it. Usually, property belongs to your husband or father. If you are a widow, you may temporarily manage property, but you cannot make major decisions independently. You would also notice a clear difference depending on whether you lived in Athens or Sparta. In Athens, restrictions are far stricter. Women are almost entirely confined to the household and closely supervised. But if you are a Spartan woman, life is comparatively freer. You can participate in athletic training to keep a strong body, you are allowed to own property, and you have more influence within your household. Because of this, Spartan women are considered far stronger and more confident than their Athenian counterparts. If you are an ordinary girl in Athens, your education takes place at home. You learn sewing, household management, cooking, and childcare, and the essential skills to become the perfect keeper of the family hearth. Intellectual pursuits and philosophy are distant matters, reserved for men. However, if you belong to the aristocracy or are a hetera, a high-class courtesan, your life is different. You may be taught music, how to play the lyre, to dance and sing, and even to acquire refined cultural knowledge in order to be the ideal companion to philosophers and nobles. The heterae are not merely entertainers, but also learned women, capable of leading conversations about poetry and philosophy. For most other ordinary women, even without formal schooling, there is still a rich treasure of oral culture. Lullabies, family traditions, and mythological tales passed down from generation to generation. Despite their limitations in many areas, women hold an important role in the religious life of ancient Greece. You may serve as a chief officiant in major rituals and festivals, such as the festivals of the virgin goddess Artemis, goddess of the hunt and chastity, and of Demeter, goddess of the harvest and fertility. In many healing or divination rites, women are the ones who perform them, using prayers and charms to ask the gods for blessings and protection. This role is both sacred and socially significant, giving you a voice within the community. You will also see the veneration of powerful goddesses such as Hera, goddess of marriage, Athena, goddess of wisdom and just warfare, and Demeter, goddess of the harvest. These goddesses are not only religious symbols, but also representations of the strength and power of women in a deeply patriarchal society. You can see that the life of a woman in ancient Greek society was a world full of restrictions, bound by strict rules and prejudices that were not easily changed. You had no citizenship rights, no freedom to participate in political or public life. Your role was largely confined to being a wife, a mother, and the keeper of the household. Duties that might seem simple, yet were vital to the survival of each family and even to the city-state itself. Yet, you still held an undeniable place and role in the spiritual and social life of the community. You kept the hearth burning, passed on culture through rituals and lullabies, and played an important part in religious ceremonies. This role was no less sacred, helping to connect the human world with the divine. You were the thread that bound family and community together, even if your voice did not carry as far as that of men. Now, compare this to your life today. You have the right to education, to participate in politics, to own property, and to freely choose your own path. Rights that now seem self-evident were once distant dreams for countless women throughout human history, including the women of ancient Greece. Ask yourself, if you had lived then, as a woman of Athens or Sparta, what would your life have been like? Would you have accepted those rules, sought to challenge them, or simply endured while finding small joys within great constraints? That is the story of the women of ancient Greece, not merely faint figures in history books, but human beings with dreams, fears, beliefs, and a will to live. And if you dare to step into their world, you will see that though small in the vast sweep of history, they helped shape the glorious civilization that we still admire today. In ancient Greece, slavery was an inseparable part of life, present in every aspect of society. Slaves were the hired hands, the main labour force, the machinery that kept the economy and daily life running. However, as a slave, you were not a free individual. You had no citizenship, no right to vote, and often not even the right to own yourself. You were the property of your master, a valuable possession, but never an equal. The proportion of slaves in the population of city-states was quite high. In Athens, as much as 1/3 of the population could be slaves, working in everything from domestic service to heavy labour. In Sparta, there was also a distinct class of slaves called helots, who endured severe oppression and were used primarily in agriculture. You could become a slave in many ways, most of them entirely against your will. War was the most common path. When your city-state went to war and won, enemy soldiers and civilians captured in battle would be turned into slaves. They were brought back to the victors' cities and sold off everywhere, working as labourers or domestic servants for the wealthy. You might be a prisoner of war, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, torn away from your family and the life you once knew. In some cases, people who were too poor to repay their debts could be sold into slavery to settle what they owed. This was not the most common form of slavery in Greece, but it did happen. You might find yourself bound to servitude simply because of an unpaid loan. Slaves were treated as a form of market commodity. There were slave markets where you would be displayed and priced based on your age, health, and skills. A new master could buy you no differently than they would a horse or an expensive ceramic vase. If you were born into a slave family, you automatically became a slave yourself, without ever having lived a single day as a free person. It was the fate you had to accept. You wake each day as a slave in ancient Greece, but your work and life can differ greatly depending on the role fate has assigned you. If you are somewhat more fortunate, you might work in a wealthy household, doing chores, cooking, washing clothes, and even caring for children. This work requires meticulousness, skill, and even patience, as masters are often demanding. You may become the closest attendant to the wife or mother of the house, privy to many family secrets unknown to others. As a labour slave, you may be sent to toil in the fields, quarry stone, build ships, or work on large construction projects. This work drains every ounce of your strength, while your meals are meagre. You labour under the burning sun or in the dark, stifling depths of mines, always under the crack of the whip and the shouts of overseers. There is also a group of slaves considered special: tutors, scribes, artists, or attendants at symposium banquets of the upper class. You may be trained to play music, sing, read and write, and think deeply. Though still a possession of your master, your life may be less harsh and allow you to encounter great ideas. Some slaves are assigned to serve in the military, as weapon bearers, in logistics, or in other essential tasks. You may not have to fight, but life in the army is far from easy. No matter the type, your life is often filled with hardship, uncertainty and restrictions. You sleep in cramped, dim rooms, sometimes in an attic or a corner of the kitchen. Your meals are plain: hard bread, lentils, a little water. You do not enjoy the lavish feasts of your masters. You must be content with the bare minimum needed to survive. Your relationship with your master can vary greatly. Some masters are kind, treating you as part of the household, granting you small freedoms and caring for your health. But there are also many who are cruel, wielding whips, issuing threats, and seeing you as nothing more than a mindless tool to serve their own interests. You have no freedom of movement, no control over your own fate. Yet there are still stories of clever slaves who worked hard, saved money to buy their freedom, or were granted it by their masters after many years of loyal service. These are the small glimmers of hope in an otherwise dark life. In reality, slaves were the backbone of the ancient Greek economy and society. Slaves like you did everything, from domestic chores and childcare to working in the fields, building fortifications, or even serving at the lavish banquets of the upper class. You allowed free citizens the time to engage in politics, philosophy, and warfare, the very pursuits that became the legends of Greece. Imagine, without you, could philosophers like Socrates have spent their days debating in the agora? Could warriors have gone to battle without worry? You are the hidden gear that keeps the machinery of society running smoothly. Yet your role is also the clearest symbol of injustice. You have no voice, no rights, even though you help enrich your master's household and build the city-state. Your life is the story of contradictions, being an essential force yet trapped in the chains of slavery. Even so, not everyone like you was bound for life in chains. There were paths to freedom, though they were difficult and rare. You might be granted liberty, manumission, by your master as a reward for loyalty or out of compassion. Sometimes you could save enough money to buy your freedom, earning extra through side work or receiving gifts from relatives within your master's household. Clever and determined slaves could become free citizens and start a new life, though their social standing would still face many limits. There are famous stories of freed slaves who remained loyal, even helping their former masters in times of need. On the other hand, there are bold tales of slave uprisings, men and women who dared to rise against oppression to seize freedom and dignity. These were the flickering flames of hope in the darkness. Can you imagine it? Your life could be a long chain of days spent enduring and serving, or it could be a journey in search of the light of freedom, fragile and full of trials. You, a slave, were an inseparable part of the machinery of ancient Greek society. You were both a necessary force for the growth of the city-states and a living symbol of injustice and oppression. Compared to other civilizations, slavery in Greece had many similarities, but also its own unique features, such as the critical role of the helots in Sparta or the diversity of slave origins in Athens. Today, looking back, you might wonder, if you were a slave in that era, what would your life have been like? How would you seek your freedom? What small dream would keep you alive through each day? Picture yourself lying under a sky full of stars, exhausted after a day's labour, asking whether tomorrow could bring a change for you. That was the dream and the unspoken truth in the lives of millions like you in ancient Greece. When the sun slips behind the Acropolis and darkness drapes over the stone alleys of Athens, you step into the world of the symposium, a gathering reserved only for free men of the elite. This is not merely a place to drink wine, but a space for art, philosophy, music, and bold laughter. The symposium takes place in the Andron, the men's room, set apart from the rest of the house, decorated with red figure scenes on black pottery, and floored with stone or strewn with fragrant flower petals. You recline on a couch, cup of wine in hand, ready to receive poetry, conversation, and playful challenges. Respectable women of Athenian households are strictly forbidden from entering the symposium. Only 2 types of women are allowed: the hetairai, educated, charming courtesans who add refinement to the feast, and female slaves who silently pour wine, fan the guests, and clean up. For the Greeks, wine is not just a drink. It is the soul of civilization. Drinking is an art, a social ritual and a bridge between mortals and the gods, blending laughter, music, and deep philosophy into every cup. Keeping the rhythm of the entire evening is the symposiarch, the master of the wine. His job is not simply to mix the wine in the great crater bowl, but to guide the mood of the gathering. Sometimes the symposiarch is chosen by lot, but other times he is an elder who knows each guest in the room and what they need that night. A good symposiarch is one who can balance philosophy with humour, drunkenness with sobriety. Wine in those days is stored in large clay jars, sealed with wood and olive oil to keep air from getting in. The rarest vintages are preserved from the time of one's ancestors, kept in secret cellars and opened only for great occasions, engagements, weddings, or the farewell of a family patriarch. Aged wine is not only delicious but carries a complex, profound flavour, like the story of a human life. Some claim that a jar in their home was once blessed by Dionysus himself. Others insist their ancestors used it to converse with Pythagoras, or share tales with Socrates. And you, as you hold your cup of wine, feel a touch of that mythology, as if cradling the history and culture of the city in your hands. When you step into the symposium, you see the great, elaborately decorated crater used to mix wine with water, a vital ritual, not a mere formality. Wine from the vessel is poured with a bronze ladle or a spout into kylix cups, wide-mouthed with 2 handles. Each cup holds a little joke. When you drink it dry, an image of Dionysus or a smirking goat appears at the bottom, making it impossible not to laugh along. Though wine is a joy, the Greeks value moderation deeply. Drunkenness, loss of control, and foul speech are the acts of someone who does not know how to drink. Behaviour fit for barbarians. Debate in the symposium is for sharing knowledge, not for becoming a fool under the influence. The symposium is where you hear philosophers discuss love, art, and life. Wine loosens shyness, awakens ideas, but does not erase clarity of thought. If you speak crudely when drunk, no one blames the wine. They blame you for not knowing how to drink like a Greek. The gathering often ends at midnight or near dawn. A few guests stagger home, others sleep on the couches, while the gentle Aegean breeze drifts through the tiled roofs and along the stone streets. The symposium is not merely about drinking wine. It is where you immerse yourself in art, intellect, and instinct. A Dionysian rite in which the boundary between god and mortal gradually blurs after a few cups of red wine. As the soft glow of sunset settles over the hills of Athens, you make your way to the open-air theatre, a place that is not only a centre of entertainment, but also the heart of the city-state's intellect and spirit. The vast theatre, with soaring tiers of stone seats holding up to 15,000 people, embraces the slope of the hill and welcomes the citizens during the festival of Dionysia, a celebration honouring Dionysus, god of wine and the art of the stage. Alongside thousands of others, you watch intently the famous plays of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Each story on stage carries a profound lesson. Tragedies tell of kings and heroes driven by cruel fate into sorrow, while comedies deliver sharp political and social satire through the laughter of Aristophanes. And you cannot miss the satyr play, the bawdy dessert of the festival, filled with coarse humour, drunken half-man, half-goat creatures revelling in wild pleasures, reminding you that humans are not only creatures of reason, but also of untamed instinct. Standing amid the crowd, you feel the atmosphere, solemn yet vibrant, where art fuses with life, and every laugh, every tear is a fragment of the soul of Athens. When the sun sets behind the red-tiled roofs of Athens, you step into an entirely different world, one of darkness, the flickering golden light of clay lamps fueled by olive oil, and the gentle murmur of prayers echoing through the quiet. A small lamp is placed before the altar of Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home, like a warm shield against the cold night. Each evening, before closing your eyes, you offer a cup of diluted wine and a few pieces of barley bread upon the altar, praying for a peaceful night, free of nightmares, free of restless spirits. The Greeks believe that dreams are messages from the gods. A prophetic dream is called oneiros, while an ordinary dream is enipnion. If you are fortunate, you may meet a dream interpreter who can unravel the mysterious signs hidden in your sleep. Beautiful dreams bring hope, but visions of an abyss or shadows chasing you are ill omens, requiring rituals to drive away evil. Night is not merely for rest, but a journey into the spiritual world where gods and souls communicate. You drift into sleep with the belief that one dream could change your fate, knowing that in the morning you might seek a dream interpreter to unlock the secrets of the night before. In this city, darkness is never just darkness. It lives, it breathes, and sometimes it can be frightening. When darkness falls over Athens, you feel it clearly. Night is not merely the absence of light, but a fragile boundary between the world of mortals and the realm of the gods. Tales of Empusa, the one-legged demoness with a leg of bronze and a leg of beast, who hunts the souls of men, or the carers, the black spirits of death who stalk the battlefield, send a shiver down your spine. To protect their homes, people draw charms, hang animal teeth, scatter salt, and never dare to look out the window at midnight. Night here is the time to light the oil lamp, whisper a prayer to Hestia for peace, and keep yourself within the shadows, for this is when the world of ghosts and gods takes its turn to reign. Living in ancient Greece, you know that life is never easy. No toilets, no medicine, no rights or equality. A child can die from a minor illness. A woman can be cast aside by society simply for sitting at the same table as a man. And yet, you still live, still love, still ponder justice, freedom, and the presence of the gods. It is because of people like you, those who light a small flame in the darkness, that today we have philosophy, theatre, the Olympics, and democracy. So, would you want to live here? Perhaps not, but at the very least, tonight as you close your eyes, you will carry with you the light of ancient dreams, knowing that you have lived a day beneath these shadows, beneath the unspoken stories no one tells aloud. And so another day closes, in the golden sunset over the white columns of Athens. You have survived, not with the glory of a hero, but with the resilience of an ordinary soul in a complex and mysterious world. Olympia, in ancient Greece. Olympia is located in the region of Elis, in the western part of the Peloponnese peninsula of Greece. It is embraced by two rivers, the Alpheos and the Cladeos, which give it a setting both majestic and serene. In summer, golden sunlight stretches across the olive-covered hills. In winter, light morning mist lingers over the ancient ruins. This location was not only ideal for gathering people from across the Greek city-states, but also carried sacred significance. The ancient Greeks believed that this land was a gift from the gods to humankind, a place dedicated to honouring human strength and skill. The Alpheos River winds like a green ribbon, serving both as a source of water and as a sacred boundary enclosing the holy precinct, the Altes. The name Olympia immediately calls to mind Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods. Though Olympia and Olympus lie hundreds of kilometres apart, their connection is spiritual. If Olympus is the dwelling place of the gods, then Olympia is where mortals express their reverence to them. In the minds of the ancient Greeks, each time they stepped into Olympia, it was as if they were entering the front courtyard of Olympus. Here took place solemn rituals, competitions in honour of Zeus and Hera, and moments when humans surpassed their own limits to touch immortality in the memory of history. In the era of ancient Greece, Olympia was neither a bustling city nor a commercial hub like Athens, nor was it a military fortress like Sparta. Olympia held a unique role. It was the religious, athletic, and non-military political centre of the entire Greek world. Every 4 years, the city-states would set aside their conflicts and observe the Olympic truce, a sacred ceasefire. so that people could travel safely to Olympia to take part in the ancient Olympic Games. This was not only a time for physical competition, but also an opportunity for city-states to showcase their cultural strength, promote artistic achievements, and strengthen political ties. For the Greeks, victory at Olympia brought not only fame to the individual but also elevated the prestige of their homeland. Thus, Olympia became a symbol that united the entire Greek world, transcending borders, languages, and political divisions. Before becoming the legendary athletic arena, Olympia was a sacred land where ancient Greeks gathered to worship Zeus, the supreme god of Mount Olympus, and Hera, the goddess of marriage and family. Archaeological evidence shows that as early as the Mycenaean period, 11th to 12th centuries BCE, ancient religious rites were already taking place here. At that time, there were no grand temples, only stone altars and simple sacrifices, primarily to pray for favourable weather and abundant harvests. It could be said that Olympia existed before the games themselves, and that athletics here began merely as a secondary element within the grand ceremonies dedicated to honouring the gods. When speaking of Olympia, one cannot overlook the myths that the ancient Greeks passed down through generations. One of the most famous is the legend of Heracles, the hero son of Zeus. It is said that after completing his 12 immortal labours, Heracles organised the first Olympic Games to give thanks to his father. He measured the running track with his own footsteps, and that distance, about 192 metres, became the standard length of the Olympia Stadium. Another legend is tied to King Pelops, the heroic figure of the Peloponnese. Pelops wished to marry Hippodamia, the daughter of King Oenomaus, but the king was notoriously cruel. Anyone who wanted her hand had to defeat him in a chariot race. If they lost, they would be executed. Pelops used cunning to defeat Oenomaus and win, and from then on the land was named Peloponnese after him, while Olympia was regarded as the place that commemorated his victory. These stories are more than just myths. They were the Greeks' way of explaining the origins of the Olympic Games, an event that was both religious and heroic in nature. The first recorded ancient Olympic Games took place in 776 BCE. From then on, every 4 years, thousands of people from across the Greek city-states would gather at Olympia to take part in and witness the competitions. At first, the Olympics lasted only 1 day and featured a single event, the Stadion, a 192-metre sprint. Over time, the number of events grew, and the festival extended to 5 days, including chariot racing, wrestling, boxing, and pankration, a brutal yet fascinating form of mixed martial art. The Olympics were not only a sporting event, but also a gathering for poets, musicians, philosophers, and politicians. The Greek city-states, normally in constant rivalry, were bound at this time by the Olympic truce, a sacred ceasefire, so that all could come to Olympia. This tradition lasted nearly 12 centuries, making Olympia the cultural, spiritual, and unifying heart of the ancient Greek world. From the 2nd century BCE, when Greece fell under Roman control, Olympia continued to exist but gradually lost its unrivaled position. The Romans introduced more arena-style entertainments, sometimes diluting the original religious meaning. By the 4th century CE, when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the worship of the Greek gods was deemed pagan. In 394 CE, Emperor Theodosius IV officially banned the Olympic Games for religious reasons. Olympia faded into obscurity, its structures slowly worn down by time and nature. In the centuries that followed, great floods and earthquakes buried Olympia under layers of earth and stone, until, thousands of years later, it was excavated and returned to humanity as one of the most magnificent legacies of ancient Greek civilization. Upon entering Olympia, the first and most important destination is the sacred precinct of the Altes, a courtyard shaded by ancient olive trees, enclosed by low walls and suffused with solemnity. At its centre stands the altar of Zeus, a mound of grey ash accumulated over centuries from sacrificial rites, where smoke once rose daily to honour the supreme god. Right beside it is the Temple of Zeus, the largest and most splendid building in Olympia, built in the Doric style with sturdy columns surrounding it. Inside once stood the seated statue of Zeus, created by the sculptor Phidias from gold and ivory, towering nearly to the temple's roof, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In the glow of torchlight, the statue shone brilliantly, making anyone who entered feel as if they were in the very presence of the god. To the north lies the older temple of Hera, bearing the simplicity and rustic charm of the 7th century BCE, originally with wooden columns later replaced by stone, which preserved many precious votive offerings. Even today, the lighting of the flame for the modern Olympic Games takes place before the Temple of Hera, serving as a symbolic thread that links past and present. Leaving the Altis through the Hellenistic vaulted gateway, the road leads directly to the stadium, a stretch of ground 192 metres long, the standard ancient stadium where fierce sprint races took place before tens of thousands of spectators seated on the sloping earth embankments. Farther toward the Alpheos River was the Hippodrome, an immense chariot racing track with perilous sharp turns. To the northwest stood the Palestra, a square wrestling ground, and the Gymnasium, a complex for training in running, javelin throwing and discus, forming the athletic heart of Olympia, where strength was honed before the days of competition. Scattered throughout the site were structures marked by political and personal ambition, such as the Philippeion, an elegant circular building erected by King Philip II of Macedon, housing gold and ivory statues of his entire family, a rare intrusion of mortal figures into a sanctuary otherwise reserved for the gods. On the outskirts stood the Leonidaion, a guest house for envoys and distinguished visitors, along with simpler lodgings for athletes. Nearby were bathhouses, cisterns and fountains in both Greek and Roman styles, serving the needs of daily life and post-competition recovery. Along the eastern edge of the Altis ran the Echostoa, a famed colonnaded walkway with a unique resonance, where announcements and speeches echoed several times, imprinting themselves in the memory of the crowd. Not far away stood the Bouleuterion, the council house where the organisers worked, and where athletes swore their oath before the statue of Zeus Horkios, affirming the sacredness of the laws. Lining the northern wall were rows of statue bases and votive offering, from captured weapons to bronze effigies inscribed with the names of victors, transforming Olympia into an open-air museum, where every stone, column, and fragment of sculpture told centuries-old stories of glory, faith, and unity across the ancient Greek world. Every 4 years, Olympia awoke from its long slumber. From the moment the sun blushed red on the horizon, streams of people poured into the valley of the Alpheos River, merchants burdened with goods, artists carrying lyres and poetry, envoys in radiant cloaks, and broad-shouldered young men, bare-chested, striding like warriors about to test their fate. This was not merely a festival, but the moment when the entire Greek world laid down its arms to celebrate human strength and spirit. The Olympic truce turned every road to Olympia into a grand avenue of peace. Only free men of Greek origin could set foot on the track. Before competing, they gathered in the Bouleuterion, placed their hands upon the statue of Zeus Horkios, and swore on their honour to obey the rules, to fight fairly, and to respect their opponents. That oath bound not only their personal honour but also their standing with the gods, for to break it was to challenge the wrath of Zeus himself. The blare of festival trumpets signalled the opening of the days of competition. First came the foot races, the primal symbols of speed and endurance. The stadion sprint of 192 metres was like an arrow loose straight at the target. The diolos, twice that distance, demanded stamina, and the dolichos, stretching over several kilometres, turned every stride into a battle with one's own breath. The stadium shook with cheers as spectators followed every movement of the straining muscles under the fierce sun. In the hippodrome, the wheels of 4-horse chariots roared over the sand, clinging tightly together through sharp turns. A single moment's hesitation could send an entire chariot tumbling, horses rearing, and dreams of victory shattered. The combat events, wrestling, boxing, and pancration, brought a different kind of tension. Bone-rattling throws, crushing punches, and submission holds that left the crowd breathless. In pancration, a nearly ruleless blend of wrestling and striking, where only biting and eye-gouging were forbidden, raw strength and sheer ruthlessness merged into one. The pentathlon was considered the pinnacle of all-around excellence. Sprinting, long jump, discus throw, javelin throw, and wrestling. Only those who combined speed, power, and skill could triumph here, and a pentathlon victory meant becoming the living ideal of the Greek hero. The sole material prize was a wreath of wild olive cut from the sacred tree in the Altis, yet its symbolic value was immeasurable. A name proclaimed before the crowd, a commemorative statue raised in the sanctuary, and a return home through the city gates as though one were a living god. Olympia was not simply about finding the fastest, the strongest, or the most enduring. It was a place where sport, art, and religion fused, where city-states once locked in bloody conflict now sat together on the same hillside, cheering for heroes. Beneath the blazing sun, the roar of the crowd mingled with the scent of sacrificial smoke, and Olympia became the blazing heart of the entire Greek civilization, a heartbeat that, more than 2,000 years later, still echoes. After more than 1,000 glorious years, Olympia began to enter the twilight of its history. From the 2nd century BCE, when Greece fell under Roman control, the games continued to be held but gradually lost their original meaning. Roman emperors intervened in the events, adding unfamiliar forms of entertainment, and at times turning Olympia into a stage for political power displays, rather than a place to honour the gods. The stability of the region was shaken by ongoing wars between rival powers, and the flow of people to Olympia slowly dwindled. The fatal blow came in the late 4th century CE, when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. The worship of Zeus was deemed pagan. In 394 CE, Emperor Theodosius IV issued a decree banning the Olympic Games, ending a tradition that had lasted nearly 12 centuries. With no more cheers and sacrificial smoke, Olympia sank into silence, left to the mercy of wind, rain, and time. In the centuries that followed, nature continued to erase the traces of human presence. The Alpheos River shifted its course several times. Floods and earthquakes buried temples under layers of mud and silt. Vegetation overran the fallen columns, turning Olympia into a wilderness that survived only in legend and in books. It was not until the 19th century that Olympia was awakened from its 1,000-year slumber. In 1829, the first excavations, carried out by the French, revealed a few ruins. But it was the large-scale excavations by a German archaeological team beginning in 1875 that truly brought Olympia back into the light. One by one, columns, fragments of statues, and the foundations of the stadium were uncovered. Patiently, archaeologists pieced together the past from broken remnants, recreating the vision of a magnificent Olympia that once was. Today, Olympia is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, and was recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1989. Visitors who come here do not merely see stone columns and foundations, they can also feel the breath of a civilization whose heartbeat was once powered by strength, art, and faith. Olympia is no longer the venue for the ancient Olympic Games, yet it remains an eternal symbol of the Olympic spirit, linking the past with the present, and inspiring the entire world whenever the Olympic flame is lit from this very land. Today, whenever the modern Olympic Games are about to begin, the flame is once again kindled at Olympia. The ceremony takes place before the Temple of Hera, where priestesses dressed in ancient Greek attire use a parabolic mirror to capture the rays of the sun and create a pure flame. This flame, believed to carry the breath of Zeus, begins its long journey across borders, seas, and continents to the host city. It is not merely an opening ritual, but an invisible thread binding together over 2,000 years of history, between the ancient and modern games. The Olympic spirit that Olympia once nurtured remains intact, setting aside conflict, uniting people, and celebrating the strength and beauty of both body and mind. From foot races under the scorching sun of the 8th century BCE to the brightly lit tracks of the 21st century, that ideal has never faded. The Olympics are a reminder that sport is not only about competition, but also about building bridges of peace and proving humanity's ability to rise above its limits. Moreover, Olympia has become a global symbol. For every athlete stepping into the modern Olympics, Olympia serves as a historical touchstone, the place where the tradition began, where the first olive wreaths were awarded, and where the first flame ignited. When the blazing torch is seen, the whole world knows it was lit from a land that has witnessed thousands of years of glory, defeat, faith, and pride. Olympia is not merely a sporting arena of the past. It is the cultural, religious, and political heart of ancient Greece, a place where sport was intertwined with worship and art, where people discovered a shared identity amid differences. Though its temples have crumbled and its ancient contests have ceased, Olympia's legacy lives on in every modern Olympic Games. Each time the Olympic flame bursts to life, Olympia is reborn, not only in humanity's memory, but also in the spirit of unity and the desire for achievement that resonates across the world. The life of Plato. Plato was one of the greatest philosophers of ancient Greece, a figure who laid the foundations of Western philosophy and profoundly influenced human thought for more than 2 millennia. He was not only the outstanding pupil of Socrates, a legendary figure in the history of philosophy, but also the teacher of Aristotle, who went on to expand the philosophical tradition with his own monumental works. Plato's role in philosophy was immensely significant. He founded the first school of philosophy, known as the Academy in Athens, a centre for research and teaching that is often regarded as the precursor to modern universities. His works were written in the form of dialogues, through which he conveyed ideas on the nature of reality, knowledge, justice, politics, and ethics. The theory of forms, one of Plato's most notable contributions, became a conceptual foundation for contemplating the relationship between the material world and the world of ideas. Plato's influence extended far beyond the realm of pure philosophy. His ideas helped shape fields such as political theory, art, education, and the social sciences. Today, Plato's name is invoked not only within academic circles of philosophy, but also throughout global cultural and intellectual life, standing as a symbol of the human desire to seek truth and pursue ideals. Plato was born around 427 BCE in the city of Athens, the cultural and political heart of ancient Greece. He came from an aristocratic family of distinguished lineage, with strong connections to the ruling elite of society. His father, Ariston, is believed to have had royal blood linking him to the ancient kings of Athens, while his mother, Perictione, belonged to another noble family renowned for its intellectual and moral traditions. Plato's family had a long-standing tradition in politics and culture. From an early age, he was immersed in an elite intellectual environment, where discussions on philosophy, art, and politics were a regular part of life. Some scholars suggest that his family may have been related to Pericles, the eminent statesman and leader of Athens during the city's golden age. It was in this context, Athens being the centre of the world's first direct democracy, yet also embroiled in the Peloponnesian Wars between Athens and Sparta, that Plato grew up and began forming his earliest views on society and human nature. His relationship with prominent figures such as Socrates, whom he deeply admired, marked a turning point in his life. Socrates was not only his teacher, but also the primary source of inspiration that led Plato to embark on his philosophical journey, laying the foundations for his lifelong pursuit of knowledge and his celebrated works in the form of dialogues. Plato's childhood unfolded during a period that was both turbulent and culturally flourishing. From a young age, he was nurtured in an environment rich in intellectual life, where debates on philosophy, art, politics, and ethics were vibrant and constant. Athens at the time stood as the hub of direct democracy, where citizens actively participated in shaping the city's decisions, and it was also home to some of the greatest philosophers of the era. Plato benefited from the traditional Greek education, which encompassed the study of poetry, mathematics, physical training, and the foundations of philosophy. However, the greatest turning point in his life and philosophical career was his meeting with and becoming a student of Socrates, the great philosopher who is still regarded today as the father of Western philosophy. Socrates left behind no written works of his own, but his influence was preserved through his students, the most prominent of whom was Plato. He taught by asking questions and engaging in dialogue, encouraging his students to think for themselves and discover truth through reasoning, rather than blindly accepting the prejudices and conventions of society. The Socratic method, using questions to lead one toward deeper understanding, became deeply embedded in Plato's thinking, shaping the distinctive style of his later philosophical dialogues. Socrates' ideas on ethics, justice, and personal responsibility left an indelible mark on Plato's mind. His concern with how to build a just society, how individuals could live well, and how they might attain truth became central themes running throughout Plato's philosophy, all rooted in the profound influence of Socrates. In 399 BCE, a tragic event occurred. Socrates was sentenced to death on the charges of corrupting the youth of Athens and undermining traditional values. The trial and execution of Socrates had a deep and lasting impact on Plato, who was then only 28 years old. After the tragic event of Socrates' death, Plato embarked on an extensive journey in search of knowledge, travelling to many lands with rich cultural and philosophical traditions. One of his most important destinations was Egypt, a country renowned for its long-standing traditions in science, mathematics and religion. There, Plato is believed to have acquired valuable knowledge in geometry, astronomy, and profound religious rituals, while also experiencing firsthand the way philosophy and theology were intertwined in Egyptian life. Plato also travelled to Italy and, in particular, to the island of Sicily, where Greek culture blended with other civilizations. In Sicily, he had the opportunity to meet contemporary philosophers and statesmen, including members of the royal family of Dionysius. Although these journeys were not always smooth, at times he failed in his attempts to exert political influence, they nonetheless broadened Plato's understanding of the world and society. During his travels, Plato is also believed to have encountered and absorbed the teachings of Pythagoras, the distinguished mathematician and philosopher. The influence of Pythagoras can be seen in Plato's emphasis on the role of mathematics and abstract forms in comprehending reality. Through these diverse experiences, Plato integrated various schools of thought into his own philosophical system, thereby building a rich and profound intellectual foundation. Around 387 BCE, upon returning to Athens after his long journeys, Plato founded a philosophical school known as the Academy. It is considered the first university in Western history, laying the groundwork for the modern higher education system. Plato's Academy was not merely a place for imparting knowledge, it was also a centre for research and debate in philosophy, science, mathematics and politics. Its teaching method focused on dialogue and logical reasoning, a clear reflection of Socratic influence. Students were encouraged to ask questions, engage in debates, and discover the truth for themselves, rather than passively absorbing information. The Academy's purpose was not only to train philosophers, but also to cultivate an elite class capable of guiding society according to ideals of justice and morality. For this reason, the curriculum included political philosophy, ethics, aesthetics, mathematics, and astronomy, fields designed to develop comprehensive intellectual ability and an understanding of the world. The Academy quickly became the leading intellectual centre in Athens and the wider Greek world. It attracted many outstanding students, among them Aristotle, who would go on to carry forward and expand philosophy with his own significant ideas. Plato's school endured and thrived for nearly 1,000 years, until it was closed in the 6th century CE. The influence of the Academy extended far beyond antiquity, shaping philosophy, science, and education throughout the medieval and early modern periods. Plato authored many philosophical works written in the form of dialogues, in which characters exchanged ideas to arrive at the truth. His most famous dialogues include The Republic, a work exploring justice and the ideal state; Phaedrus, focused on love, the soul, and the art of rhetoric; and The Statesman, an analysis of different forms of government and the art of ruling. At the heart of Plato's philosophy lies the theory of forms, or ideas. He argued that the material world we see is merely a reflection of ideal, immutable, and perfect forms that exist in a separate realm. For example, an actual table is imperfect, but it embodies the perfect form of the table. This concept became the foundation for Plato's exploration of knowledge and reality, asserting that true knowledge is the understanding of these eternal forms. In The Republic, Plato describes an ideal state where justice is achieved through a division of society into 3 classes: the rulers, philosopher kings, the warriors, and the producers. He emphasized that only those with both knowledge and virtue were worthy of leading society. This idea has had a profound and lasting influence on Western political philosophy. In addition, Plato developed numerous ideas on knowledge, ethics, art, and the soul, laying the groundwork for the growth of Western philosophy for centuries to come. He was not an isolated philosopher, but a figure who maintained extensive connections with notable contemporaries. Plato was the teacher of Aristotle, an exceptional student who expanded and refined many aspects of his master's philosophy, eventually forming his own distinct school of thought. Politically, Plato had complex relationships with rulers and other philosophers. His visits to Sicily, aimed at providing political counsel to Dionysius, the ruler of Syracuse, revealed his hope of applying his philosophical ideals to the practical realm of governance. However, these efforts often met with failure and ended in disappointment. Plato also engaged in relationships and debates with many other philosophers of his time, further enriching his intellectual framework. In his later years, Plato continued to lead and teach at the academy, where he nurtured and trained a new generation of philosophers and scholars. Despite his setbacks in political ventures, he remained devoted to research and teaching. Plato died around 347 BCE at the age of about 80. Although little is known about the exact circumstances of his death, the intellectual legacy he left behind was immense, influencing not only Athens but the entirety of Western civilization thereafter. Plato is regarded as one of the cornerstones of Western philosophy and a symbol of ancient Greek civilization. His philosophy on forms, justice, knowledge, and society opened new pathways for human thought, profoundly shaping philosophers, scientists, and statesmen over many centuries. His influence extended far beyond philosophy, reaching into science, art, education, and politics. Many of his ideas continue to be studied and debated in universities today. In modern culture, Plato remains celebrated as an intellectual giant, a symbol of the pursuit of truth and high ideals. His name is associated with universities, research institutions, and philosophical discourse around the world, testifying to the enduring vitality of the ideas he bequeathed to humanity.